last video, I unboxed and set up my new Creality CR10s 3D printer. And in this video, I'm going to be also unboxing and setting up my new Creality CR10 V2 3D printer. You may ask why I did that, or why I have two, or do I have two? I will explain. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, definitely consider checking out some of the other content I have on my channel as well, related to my go-kart build, my Corvette build, 3D printing now, and just other automotive related content as well. And if you're a continued viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it here on the channel. So, if you guys watched my most recent video, the one before this, I unboxed and set up my new toy for my personal projects at home, my Creality CR10s 3D printer. And you can see here that I have another 3D printer, the Creality CR10 V2. Now the reasoning was I got that printer all set up and it was working really well in my last video. And I did a few prints in between the test print that was in the video and between now. But the problem was based on where I'm going to be putting the printer in my house, it was a little bit too noisy. And that's the thing that I didn't really consider. With some printers, the stepper motors and the motherboard are a little bit noisy. You get a very robotic sound. When the printer's moving and all the stepper motors are driving the belts and everything. So, and because it was to the point where I had the printer upstairs and downstairs in our master bedroom with the door closed, you could still hear the printer running. So if I needed to do any multiple day prints or overnight prints, it was going to kind of be a nuisance to listen to that thing running while we're trying to go to sleep. So that led me to go to the Creality CR10 V2, which is essentially the upgrade to the CR10s. And it comes with a lot of different things that I'll go over that are improved from the CR10s, but the big one is that this one has a silent motherboard and silent stepper motors. So that is a huge thing for me because I'm going to be putting the printer just outside this door here in kind of our loft area. So that way the printer can be pretty quiet. The only noise that we might hear is some fan noise. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Basically the same thing I did in the previous video, is unbox, show you guys what comes in the package, and set this thing up, because this is one of Creality's newest 3D printers to their whole 3D printer series, especially their CR 3D printer series. So I'm curious to see how this one compares to the previous CR10s. Alright, so we got our box over here, the Creality CR10 V2. Now I opened the box real quick just before the video just to make sure everything looked good, but everything is very similar to how the CR10s was packaged. And again, I really like how Creality uses this really nice quality packing foam to secure the printer in the box to protect it during shipping. It's very similar to that foam you use in toolboxes when you want to shadow where tools go and whatnot. So very nice quality, good to see that, because these printers get shipped all over the world. Right away you get your CR10 V2 user manual, and then here you have your build plate, the lower part of the printer, and then below that is your Z tower. So I'm going to set the camera to the side and I'm going to start pulling stuff out of the box so we can get this thing set up to print. Before I pull more stuff out, I just want to go ahead and show in more detail how well packaged this is. See, the Z tower is very nicely snug in there. Your control box here with your screen and motherboard, all your little tools and bolts and hardware, and then a sample spool of filament, and then in here you have the Z tower support rods that you screw together. So I just want to show real quick how nicely packaged this is. It's good to see that they take time and effort into making sure these printers arrive safely. Alright, so here's everything that comes in the box, all laid out on the ground. So the first step I'm going to do is prepare the Z tower to get mounted to the build plate here, and then we can get the printer up on the table and start connecting all the wires for the accessory box and things like that. So another thing I want to go over is what comes in your little toolbox here. Okay, so you got your Z-stop, I believe, bracket, and your hardware and for mounting the Z tower, and your hardware for mounting your spool holder. in here you get a filament nozzle kind of like cleaner, a QC certificate showing that past quality control, little tool bag with a bunch of Allen wrenches, open end wrench, screwdriver, and zip ties. And then in the cardboard here you get the little blue snippers to cut filament and zip ties and things like that. Here's your main power cord, the top part to the spool holder bracket that mounts to the control box. You get some spare Teflon tube nozzles, some spare nozzles, or adapters I should say, two spare nozzles. You get your USB flash drive. You get an 8 gig SD card, which this printer actually comes standard with a standard size SD card and not a micro SD. And then another Z-stop switch. I have to see where that goes. Maybe it's a extra part for a replacement just in case. And then this seems to be all the hardware to mount the ZAxis or Z-Tower struts, support braces. You get your aluminum scraper here and a spare Bowden tube to replace in case that one goes bad or anything like that. Eventually I'm going to upgrade this to the Capricorn tubing. So the last manual for the CR10s was very useful, I found. It was very clear and nice on how to assemble it. You get nice pictures and diagrams and everything. So here you got a breakdown. Well, here's all your specs for the printer. Well, it's kind of hard to see, but it's all your specs. This is everything that's included in the box. Step one, like I said, is to install the Z-axis or the gantry frame to the base. And then there's a few things that they don't mention in here that I'm going to go over that I found by watching some videos. So you do that first, then you do the Z-axis support rods, mount the spool holder on the control box, install the Z-axis limit switch, plug all your wires in, do some bed leveling and some other calibrations initially, and then you are good to go. And it goes over how to load filament and even use their slicer software, which I just use Cura. And then it's got a nice depiction of the motherboard and all the controls and everything. So a very useful manual. I've found that Creality does a great job with making these user manuals. So I actually misspoke. Before installing your ZAxis Gantry, one thing that I found that's not included in the manual, but after watching quite a few videos here on YouTube, is recommended, is adjusting your channel wheels for your build plate. Now, when it comes from the factory, not all of them are tightened all the way, and you don't want to do them too tight or else you'll prematurely grind away the plastic. But you want them to be tight enough to where the whole bed will move if you twist the wheel. So you can see this one, the whole frame moves, but with this one, the wheel will actually spin. This one, the frame moves. This one, the wheel spins, frame moves, wheel spins. So I got a few adjusting to do. That's where you can use your open face wrench and adjust the eccentric nut to put a little bit more pressure on the channels here. So now that we've done that, now I will install the Z-axis tower to the main frame. And based on my experience from the CR10s, the best way to do this is put it on the ground, put that on its side, and then kind of mount a screw or two from this into that, and then you can mount them all and then finally stand it up. Alrighty, so I got the Z-tower mounted to the base frame here, and as I was doing that, I started to kind of notice some of the small details and improvements that Creality made on this printer, which I'll do kind of like a brief overview kind of towards the end of the video of all those little updates that I noticed for this printer versus the older CR10s. So the next step is to mount those Z support rods. So they come here. See, there's 4 here, but there's only 2 for the printer, so what you have to do is thread 2 of them together. And then you get 2 longer ones, and all the hardware is in one of the baggies, so get all those assembled. And then there's these little brackets that go on the top here and on the bottom here to mount the rods to the printer frame. And then once we do that, we'll start putting the control box together. Okay, so here's all your hardware for your Z support rods. So these 2 threaded rod pieces here are what you're going to use to connect the 2 rods together for each side. These 2 here are your brackets for the top of the printer. that go up there. And then these special threaded rods with these, I can't remember the official term for these, but these go on the ends of each rod, and then that's what mounts into the brackets and into the printer. And then you have all your hardware here with hammer nuts. The hammer nuts are used for these brackets, and then the other just bolts are going into the base plate of the printer here, or the frame. You have to pop these little caps out, and then that'll expose a threaded hole to put those in. So at the end of each support rod here, you're going to put one of these threaded bolts with an eyelet, is what I'm going to call it. And then before you thread it into the rod here, you're going to want to thread a nut on. This is your jam nut that you're going to use to lock this position in place, so that when you thread this in, it can't move in and out or twist or anything. It'll be nice and rigid, so when you get your rods all mounted to the printer frame. And I've found that it's better to leave these a little bit long, and then you can thread them in if you need a little bit more length on them. Alright, so now I'm going to be putting the brackets on. So just to clarify, your bracket's going to go on like this with the two bolts there with your hammer nuts. You want to thread your hammer nuts on the back side, and then those will fit into the slots, and as you tighten them, just make sure that they're oriented and vertically so that they don't pull through, that they're locked into that channel there. And then this hole right there, that's threaded, so your bolt here will just go through the eyelet on the one end of the support rod and thread into this part of the bracket. And the same deal here, this hole on the bottom of the printer is threaded as well. Alright, so I got the Z support rods on, so now the next step I'm going to do here is connect up some of the limit switches and steppered motors. So one of the big things that I also liked about the CR10 V2 is that they cleaned up the wiring a lot. So when I set up the CR10s, it was kind of a mess of wires everywhere. They did a great job at improving the wiring, because a lot of it is built into the channels now of the printer. So a lot of the wires are built into the bottom, and when you put the ZAxis on, all you got to do is plug it into the stepper motor here, the other Z stepper motor, and then some of the limit switches. So I'm going to go ahead and plug these two motors in, and then the next step is to put our ZAxis limit switch on, which then this plug will go into as well. And the other thing too is that they do a great job if you ever have to take the printer apart to troubleshoot or whatever. All the wires are all labeled with these little yellow tags. It's hard to see on the video, but this says Z, that one says Z, this says Y, so you know exactly where everything needs to go. Alright, so the next step is put our ZAxis limit switch on the printer frame, and I did confirm the other, in the bag there, you do get a spare limit switch with all your extra parts as well. So in case one goes out, you got an extra one that comes with the printer. So it comes on this little bracket here, which is removable. There's two little screws in there as well in case you need to replace it. How this printer differs from the CR10s and others is, previously the bracket would be attached with hammer nuts like you use for the support rods, but on this printer there's two threaded holes on the ZAxis Gantry that you just thread these bolts into, and then that mounts your ZAxis limit switch. Alright, so we got our limit switch installed with the switch wire plugged in as well. So the only downside I could see with this is before, when you had your hammer nuts, you could use that as some adjustability if you got the one that didn't have the T bracket that went this way. If you had the one with the CR10s and other printers that was like this and it mounted in via hammer nuts, you could use that to adjust the height of the Z-axis to, you know, mess with in case you had a thicker bed or whatnot. But it is nice here that you do get some precision with exactly where to put this with those threaded holes. So now I got that, so now I'm gonna get the control box unboxed out of there, put it up on the table, and then we'll start plugging in the big wires here and get ready to fire this thing up for the first time. Alright, so right away we got our control box here, and you can see that the wiring, like I said, was definitely improved with this printer. Now it's just two wires coming out of the control box, and you have one aircraft style connector that's the bed heater that mounts into the back of that. So you got three main wire bundles there, which really cleans it up a lot. They kind of changed the face here. It's got a little bit of a glossy face underneath the plastic wrapper, and it also has the Creality branding there on the front. One thing too that a lot of people forget, and it kind of messes them up when they fire the printer on, is make sure you change this little switch here. It's a red switch. Make sure you set it to the right voltage based on where you live. So in the US here, I'm going to switch it to the 115 volts. Alright, so once you got that switched over to your right voltage, you're going to plug in your control box here to the actual printer. So you got two main wires come out of the control box, like I said. So this one here is going to plug in beneath the printer there into a little port. And then this big guy here is going to plug into right here just below your filament runout sensor. And it's really nice. It's kind of like a big junction area for all of these wires for the stepper motors, the switches and everything, and the heaters. So like I said, it really cleans up the look of this printer, which was one of the complaints that I've read a lot with CR10s owners and users. Alright, so I got all the wires plugged in here. It looks like a mess now, but with some cable ties and cleaning up. I'm actually going to move this printer onto a different table. I'm just painting the top right now and waiting for it to dry, so this is just a temporary location. But wanted to note real quick that these cables here, this guy and the aircraft connector, they only go in one way. The plugs are slotted in a way that they only will fit in one way, so just make sure you take note of that and don't try and shove it in if it's not going in. So now I got the main power outlet plugged in, so I'm going to plug into the outlet, turn this guy on. Okay, so last thing I just forgot, put the spool holder on, just two little screws there, use a screwdriver. So printer's all plugged in, so let's get this thing fired up. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move the different stepper motors around, the X, Y, and Z. I got to raise the Z up a little bit so it's not so close to the build plate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bed leveling real quick. I'm not going to show you how to do that in this video. There's plenty of videos out there on how to do that. And then I'll get my filament loaded in and we will try and get this thing ready to print. Alrighty, so I got the bed all leveled. The only downside with this printer I've noticed so far with bed leveling at least is, I don't know what it is, but in the CR10s firmware, they had a setup or a menu for the printer to automatically go to all four corners when you tell it to, which really helps with bed leveling. But basically how they tell you to do it with this is just disable the steppers and manually move the X and Y to get it to the four corners, and then you just rotate those the big wheels here. They're really nice and big and ergonomic, so it's easier to spin them, and then you just of course use a piece of paper and shim it between the nozzle. The only thing just to watch out for, this bed here, it's that like ceramic, it's glass with like a ceramic or some type of surface on the top. Just make sure the nozzle isn't too close from the factory before you start moving things around, even by hand, because you'll scratch up the glass or surface a little bit, and there's a few spots where it got a little tight and just left a little mark, nothing too serious. So now what I'm going to do is load up the filament, get this thing heated up, and I'll load in my first test print and we'll see how this thing does. Alright guys, so I ran into a little bit of an error. When I was trying to load the filament, I kept getting this weird picture, or this weird error message on the screen. Basically what it looked like was, it looked like a screen that would pop up when the filament runout sensor detects there's no more filament in the middle of a print. It kept saying print paused. I'll put the picture on the screen here. And then it would beep, and then I couldn't get out of the menu. So, and that was happening when I was trying to load the filament. So what I had to do was basically manually load the filament by running the extruder motor when it was preheated until I started seeing it come out of the nozzle. So now I did that. I started seeing filament come out. You can see here. So they had tested the printer previously with a red filament, it looks like. So now I got the benchy loaded up from Cura, and we're gonna test this. I'm not doing any blue tape this time, just gonna try it right on the bed, see how it does. But if we get adhesion issues, I'm gonna put blue tape over the surface there. So I'll let it start printing. It's heating up right now, heating the nozzle up, but man, I tell you, the 24 volt power supply in this guy, it heats up way faster than the 12 volt system in the CR10s. And it is so quiet. That is amazing. Well, might have to do some rebed leveling here. Alright, I had to do some on-the-fly bed leveling just to, it was very close, but it was just not close enough. You know, you could kind of tell when your bed leveling isn't perfect. Well, one, it was dragging the filament around, it wasn't sticking exactly, and then you can kind of tell when it's not flat enough on the first layer and it's more of a cylindrical shape, that it's not, you know, level enough or close enough to the bed. So I just kind of turned the wheels a little bit until it looked good as it was going, and then restarted the print. So everything looks good for now, aside from that little filament loading error. It seems to be going really smoothly, so I'll keep you guys updated as this test benchy print progresses along and finishes. Okay, so it is now the next morning. Decided to let the print run. I fell asleep last night, so I didn't want to wait for this thing to finish, but it turned out beautifully. That benchy is very nice quality. It might be hard to see on camera, but it's just very good for a first print. I'm very impressed with this printer, just doing it right out of the box. We didn't have any bed adhesion issues, so that's great to see also. So let's see how easily this pops off, because I know with the glass, the way it's supposed to work is when it cools down, this should just pop right off. And look at that. That's pretty good. Look, it's pulling it like a slinky. But yeah, it came off well. It's kind of hard to see on camera because it's white, but that is just a great quality print. Got all the details nicely, not a lot of stringing, no boogers or anything. It was, you know, layer lines you can see a little bit down here, but other than that, it was pretty darn good for a first print. So you know how I was talking about yesterday, I was having that issue when I was trying to change filament. It kept giving me this print paused and then it wouldn't do anything. Well, if I just waited long enough, actually it did. It retracted the filament, and then a little bit, because I saw the scroll wheel or the spool wheel move, and then I waited a little bit longer, and then I guess it's just automatically programmed in the firmware to pull and extrude filament, and so I waited long enough so it started pulling filament and extruding it out of the nozzle. So because you can see filament started coming out of the nozzle there, and then I get this menu, so you can either resume print or extrude more. So I hit extrude more, and that's obviously just gonna see the scroll wheel moving slightly, or the spool wheel, keep saying that, and then you can see we're extruding plastic right there, and then after a while it will go back to that other screen to give us the option to resume or extrude more. So let's see what happens when we click resume. So it thinks that it was trying to resume a print, but it wasn't actually. It just went to the position that the printer was in before, which is the end stage for the print finished. So Cura's slicer, when the print finishes, it moves the Y build plate all the way forward, so it's easy to pull. So I guess, you know, there is no issue. It's just I had to get used to the different firmware programming for the way this printer's set up versus the CR10s. So I just did another test real quick, just extruded a little bit more filament. So here's what happens. If you click extrude more, it's just going to pump more out, but if you click resume print, this is what the printer will do here. Let me pull this out of the way. So it's just going to send it back to the print position that it was before you click to change filament, because I guess it just assumes the same procedure, whereas if the filament ran out, it like pauses the print, which is interesting, but just different. Okay, so I thought I'd do a little benchy comparison here. On the left is the benchy print from the CR10s. On the right is the benchy print from the CR10 V2. They're very similar, both very good quality. Very impressed with both printers. The thing that I did notice though, you can kind of see it there, there's some stringing and a little bit of boogering on this printer, which could be due to retraction. It could be a few things, and keep in mind I didn't calibrate E-steps or anything on these two printers. So these are straight out of the box, no tinkering or messing with any settings aside from what you would in Cura when you're slicing the profile. On the bottom, there was a little bit maybe of under extrusion right there. You can kind of see there's a little bit of a lip, a rough spot. And I do not see that on the benchy from the CR10 V2. On the V2 though, I do see a little bit more evidence of layer lines on the bottom here. I know it's kind of hard to see that on camera, especially because these are white, but you can kind of see a little bit more layer lines. Still really nice quality. It's not too rough or anything, but yeah, so that's the only thing I saw, and no stringing on this one. So it could be that the nice all metal extruder gears and everything just are a little bit better for retraction, but both printers I'm very impressed with the quality straight out of the box. So either one you go with, you're gonna have a good printer. It's just the V2 is super quiet. Like, I could not hear that thing at all downstairs with the door open here. Now, in summary here, real quick, I thought I'd do just a quick comparison between my experience with this printer so far and the CR10s, and just what I've noticed as far as the differences go in the upgrades for the CR10 V2 versus the 10s. And just to see, you know, if it's worth it for you to upgrade, or if you're getting a printer for the first time, which one to go with. Now, granted, I only had the CR10s for about a week and did only a few test prints on it before I returned it, so I'm not doing a full-on comparison video. This is just some minor things that I've noticed the difference between the two right off the bat. So right off the bat, I already mentioned kind of more aesthetics. The screen, it's a more glossy surface once I pull this plastic off, and then they put the Creality logo there. Scroll wheel again is finished with almost like a faux metal. It's still plastic. Actually, I think that might be just like cheap pot metal. It feels cold. So, but the front end is just finished a little bit nicer. And the other thing too is on my CR10s, I don't know if it was just that one, the scroll wheel wasn't, it seemed like almost a dead spot in the scroll wheel on the CR10s, like right about here, that where you would spin it there, nothing would happen. You'd have to spin down more. So there's that. As far as the back of the control box goes, again, you only have two wire bundles coming out for the plugs here and the plugs there, and then one aircraft style connector for the bed heater. And that'll bring me to the next point, is the wire management on this printer is definitely a lot better. It's not perfect. Like, if you really want a printer with good wire management, you get one that's fully enclosed like the CR10s Pro. But this one, again, all of your stepper motor connections and your limit switch connections are go into like a junction box down here, and same thing up here for all your stepper motor, your extruder, your filament runout sensor. It goes into like a big junction right here, and you just have this big plug right here. The other thing too is the filament runout sensor is more built into the printer itself and the design. With the CR10s, it was just a bracket that just kind of slid on, kind of like an add-on thing, since it was an upgrade to this original CR10. The extruder mechanism here is all metal, not plastic. And there is an adjustment on the spring tension, so you can adjust how much pressure is being applied to the filament as it's going through the extruder gear and roller. And I can't remember if I'm remembering correctly or not, but I feel like this bracket here that supports the bed heater cord is a little bit more beefy and supported. Before it was just like a little piece here, but I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly, but I feel like this is a little bit more beefy on the CR10 V2. Some more obvious things, the bed obviously comes with a, I believe it's ceramic, correct me if I'm wrong, coating on top of the glass, and we'll see how that fares over time. I may still end up going to blue tape. Biggie one is that the stepper motors are the special brand of TMC, so they're super quiet, can't even hear them. And it's really nice because you can put it in somewhere if you have a small house or an area that you're in a lot. You don't have to hear this thing, you know, all the time. The next thing is the whole hot end is a little bit redesigned. It's not an all metal hot end. Some people think it's all metal, but it has been confirmed that the PTFE tube goes all the way to the bottom. Eventually that will be an upgrade for me. I will do an all metal hot end. So you have some better cooling fans and cooling ducts. So here you have your nozzle cooler, and then here you have your part cooling fan, and they've redesigned the box here so that the there's dual part cooling on either side. So it goes down on this side and then it channels air across and goes down on that side too for better part cooling. And then, so again, some of the more obvious aesthetic things, which I still kind of like. All these parts here are metal, and they've got this really nice anodized blue color to them. Blue is like my favorite color, so that's pretty cool. It just looks really nice, high quality. The aluminum extrusions for all the frame is still the same, all very nice still. The support bars are a nice add-on. Some people, you know, especially I was talking to my friend Will, and he said that's probably not super necessary, but and I agreed with him that the support bars are an extra thing, but you know, but if it comes with the package, then might as well just get it. And who knows, maybe you'll see an improvement with the performance of this printer having these when you're doing a really tall print. So when vibration and movement towards the top of the print is essential. And just the last few things here, they have cleaned up some of the belts and just design of the printer in general. And now there's a cover on the front of this, so you can't get hair or anything caught in the belt scroll wheel or anything. On the back here, it's hard to see. Let me go around the other side. On the CR10s, the Y stepper motor was actually on the exterior of the frame on this side, but on this printer they've incorporated it into the middle of the frame, so it's a little bit more ergonomic and it doesn't take up as much space. Although, you know, you can see here with the bed all the way back, you still want to give yourself a good amount of room on the back of the printer so you don't crunch this wire and your printer's not running into anything. So just a little thing to like clean up the look, but you still need to give room there. And then the last thing I'd say is the electronics are all upgraded. So you got the upgraded CR10 V2 motherboard. I can't remember the exact number of the motherboard that they use for this. And then you have a Meanwell, so the more brand name power supply, and this is a 24 volt system. And the one thing that I definitely noticed when using this printer versus the CR10s is that this heated up probably twice as fast. The bed heated up twice as fast and the nozzle heated up twice as fast. So definitely an upgrade there to see that. And once I've gotten more experience and I've done a lot more prints on this printer and learned it more and tinkered with it a little bit, I will definitely do a full-on review, because I don't feel it's right for me to do a review right now with only limited experience. So once I get more experience and actually get some print hours on this guy, I will definitely put out my thoughts and full-on review on the CR10 V2. Guys, that's going to do it for this video and unboxing and setting up my new Creality CR10 V2. It was kind of an interesting story of events here, where I got the 10S and then I had to return it just because it's a little bit too loud, and I thought, you know, while I was in that return window, might as well return it and get the upgraded CR10 V2. And so far, I'm really happy with that choice. There's a lot of little features that make the printer just a step up from the CR10S. And of course the silent stepper motors are a huge thing. It's amazing how quiet this printer is. The only thing you can hear is fan noise, which is just white noise, so that's definitely more bearable than the robotic sounds from the stepper motors and the drivers and motherboard and whatnot. So again, I'm very happy with this printer. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below and I'll do my best to answer them for you. I do plan on doing a ton of more 3D printing videos with this printer in the future. I have all these great ideas. I'm going to be incorporating the printer and using 3D printed parts on my go-kart project, the Corvette project, and just anything else that I can think of that could benefit from some 3D printed custom parts. So if you guys haven't already, definitely subscribe for more videos to come. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next one.